Until the Quiet Man has been introduced and has been blended and bottled here in Derry, there's been no Irish whiskey for nearly 100 years. Well, we have two variants of the Quiet Man. The first is the 8-year-old single malt. It's not blended with whiskey from any other distillery. Then we also have a blended Irish whiskey. And the Quiet Man blend is a blend of 80% grain whiskey and 20% malt whiskey. I grew up loving the sounds of the laughter, the crack, and the smells of the beer and the whiskey, especially the whiskey. Now that I'm blending and bottling my own whiskey, I'm naming it after my father. In 50 years as a bartender, he saw a lot of things and he heard a lot of stories. But like all good bartenders, he was true to his code and he told no tales. My father, John Mulgrew, the Quiet Man, or, as we say in the Irish, An Fear Ciúin.
Hello, and thanks for clicking on the link to watch this video. My name is Kieran Mulgrew, and I am the Managing Director of An Fear Ciúin, the Quiet Man Irish Whiskey, an independent owner-owned and operated Irish drinks company. And this short video is a 3D walkthrough of our new Irish whiskey distillery, which we are building in Ebrington Square in Derry, Northern Ireland. So come on inside and have a look around while I tell you a little bit about the distillery and about the history of Irish whiskey distillation in Derry, and, most importantly for me, tell you why our whiskey and our distillery is called the Quiet Man, named after my father, John Mulgrew. These graphics are a representation of what the visitor experience will be like in the distillery, but don't pay too much attention to the images on the walls or the old equipment lying around. That is just to give you an idea of the sort of displays we will have. The building project will take about 20 months, and when we open in mid-2018, the Quiet Man Craft Distillery will be the first newly built distillery to open in Derry in 180 years. So we will be bringing back to Derry and the northwest of Ireland one of its traditional crafts, distillation. And we will be building on a long history of Irish whiskey making in the city that dates back to 1815, when Alexander Stewart built the city's first licensed distillery in Pennyburn. Although, Ireland being Ireland, I'm sure it wasn't the first distillery in Derry, just the first legal one. By the middle of the 1800s, there were 3 distilleries in Derry, with Watts Distillery in the Bogside, Meehan's in the Waterside, joining Stewart's Pennyburn Distillery, and the combined output of the 3 made Derry the whisky capital of the world by the end of the 19th century, with more whisky produced in Derry than any other city in the world. But time moves on, and nothing lasts forever, or so we're told, and in 1921 the Watts family, who had bought over the other 2 distilleries, brewed their last mash in the final weekend of October, and whisky distilling in Derry was no more. Until now. Almost 100 years later, when the Quiet Man Craft Distillery will lay down its first mash and bring the old whisky making craft back to Derry in 2018. So far you've seen around the display space, and when we are open for visitors, we will have displays on our home city of Derry, on the history of Irish whisky distillation in the city, and on what makes Irish whisky, on how that is different from Scotch or American or Canadian or Japanese whisky. But now, let's go into the distillery itself, where you'll see how our whisky is made, from the milling of grain through to the traditional Irish triple distillation. The process starts with milling grain, which really just means turning grain into a fine powder and then adding this milled grain to hot water in a vessel called a lauterton. This is the first stage of distilling whisky, and it's called mashing. And the whole point of mashing is to convert complex starches in the grain into simple sugars that are more easily fermented and turned into alcohol. After mashing, the liquid is called brewer's beer, and this goes through one of the 5 fermentation vessels which you have seen, and here distillers' yeasts are added to turn the sugars in the liquid into alcohol and get the brewer's beer ready for distillation. So you follow the process into the still room, where we will have 3 traditional Irish pot stills to make sure the Quiet Man is a triple distilled Irish whisky. The eagle-eyed among you will have counted 4 pot stills, but we are future-proofing the distillery by creating the space for a 4th still should we ever need to increase production capacity. Below the whisky stills, there is another standalone still which we can use to produce other spirits such as vodka or gin. As the video moves outside the distillery, you can see our whisky garden, where visitors can sit and watch the River Foyle wind its way through Derry while they enjoy a sample of the Quiet Man. Sure, what else would you do that could be half as good? The Quiet Man. Maybe I should tell you why the whisky is called the Quiet Man. Well, it's named after my father, John Mulgrew. He was a bartender who worked for over 50 years in bars around Belfast. Sometimes he would bring me in to work with him, so I grew up loving the sounds and the smells of the bar, the crack and the laughter, the smell of the beer and the whisky, especially the whisky. Now that I'm making my own whisky, I'm naming it after my father. In 50 years as a bartender, he saw a lot of things, and he heard a lot of stories. But, like all good bartenders, he was true to his code and told no tales. And that is why they called him the Quiet Man. Or, as they say in the Irish, An Fear Ciúin. So, thanks for watching the video. We will post updates on our Facebook and Twitter feeds and on the Quiet Man Irish Whisky website. And if you're ever in Derry, be sure to call in and see us.